What is up, everybody? It's Ed Gow Jr. here from Dad Central, and another epic conversation we're going to have today on the Dad Central show. And usually you see my partner in crime, Drew Solon. He cannot make it today, but we're going to still push through. Drew will be back for our next epic conversation. Now, before we go any further, let's recognize that the Dad Central show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man because when men care for themselves and others, there is positive impact. So we're excited to be having a conversation about Black fatherhood today. And I have two incredible fathers to share with you. And actually, this is an international conversation because I have a Black father from Canada, and we have a Black father from the US with us today. And we're looking forward to getting their journey as a Black father. So we're going to bring both of them up. We've got Matt Prestbury from Black Fathers down in the US, and we have Roger Dundas from BuyBlacks.com. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Doing great, thanks.
Fantastic, man. It's a great day.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedules of, first of all, being great dads and also serving your communities.
100%.
Really appreciate it, and I don't take it for granted. So before we go any further, Matt, can you give a little background about yourself, well, the organization you represent?
Sure. So I in 2008, I started Black Fathers as a Facebook group, and we've been running ever since, going on 14 years now. So with that, in 2019, I was a part of a Facebook community leadership program, and we got funding and assistance with starting a project of our choice. And my project was to create the Black Fathers Foundation as somewhat of an extension of the work that I've been doing through Black Fathers in terms of bringing men together, giving them a platform so that their voices can be heard, they can be resources to one another. So the foundation is about resources in a multitude of ways. Our number one way that we provide resources is financial. So we assist men with financial needs, and we're currently working to provide other things such as diapers, wipes, and those sorts of things for fathers when they find themselves having challenges. Other part of it is networking and bringing other organizations that work with men, particularly Black men, bringing them together, because so often we see organizations working in silos and people doing their own thing or even working in cliques. But one of the things that I really wanted to push is that I think it's very important for us to collaborate and work together because we're a lot stronger together. And then doing things like this, being on interviews on your show and creating media ourselves so that Black men can continue to have a space to tell their own stories and speak for themselves.
Wonderful. And I always like to get you to share this. How many members do you have on your Facebook group?
96.1 thousand currently.
Okay. And that has been done organically, correct?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Wow.
We haven't bought any followers or anything like that. And as a matter of fact, we could have been over the 100,000 mark a long time ago, but we are a group that's focused on quality over quantity. So the numbers are fantastic, but we got a lot of people we had to put out, because they just weren't acting right. And we create a climate and culture that we want to maintain. So we could have a lot more. We just had to push some rogue folks who didn't want to toe the line. We had to put them out.
No problem. Roger, share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm the proud publisher and co-founder of BuyBlacks.com. It's a 9.5-year-old online magazine that focuses on telling Black Canadian stories, and co-founded with my wife. And we have two children, actually, Marley and Chase. Their 7 and 11 birthdays were yesterday. Yeah, so they have the same birthday date, 4 years apart.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, really excited to have this conversation happen. So let's start off with our opening question for both of you. What was life like growing up? Can you speak about the relationship you had with your dad, if it holds significance to you? Who'd like to start with that first?
I'll take it. So I very early on, I had a very close relationship with my pops, and we did a ton of things together. The things that always stand out in my mind are, number one, the road trips we would take, places we would go, and just different kinds of experiences that we would have that a lot of my peers, I will say, didn't necessarily get the experience that I know of. So those are things that really stand out in my mind. We went to Montreal one time. I was like 8 or 9. Mexico, we went to like Laredo and walked across the border into Mexico and hung out and did that sort of stuff. Always baseball games, Orioles games, or wherever we would go. Like when we went to Montreal, we went to a baseball game and watched the Expos play when they were still there. Philly. So that's one thing I always carry with me is the experiences. Later on, when my mom and my pop had separated, living with my dad for a while, and then I decided to go live with my mom. So once I did that, my youngest sister and I, we went to live with our mother, and the relationship became somewhat estranged, I would say, and really one-sided. So if I wanted to see him, spend time, I had to reach out and things like that. And that's just the way it was. I never, throw my father under the bus. I never drag him, but that's just the reality of what it was. For a long time, it was a one-sided relationship that was very much different from what I had during the period while I was living with him.
Roger?
So,
go ahead, Matt. Go finish up.
I was just going to say, it definitely holds significance to me. I learned a lot, and I know I don't want to step on some other questions or jump to them too quickly, but definitely holds significance in a lot of ways for the things that we did together. I loved all the time we had together, but then also not being together when I got into my teen years and things like that. So now with my kids, I tell my kids all the time, like, these things I'm doing with you all, I didn't get to do with my pops. So I'm holding on to them tightly because I'm able to do them for them, the things that I didn't have the chance to do with him.
Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, you know what? I was listening to it's a similar story. It's weird listening to Matt say the story, because my parents were married, and so my parents separated when I was 10. But up until that point, my dad, so it were 5 kids, 3 girls, 2 boys at the end, and he would drag his boys. I say drag, but really he would take us with him traveling. So we went all around Jamaica. I grew up in Jamaica, so we went all around Jamaica. We went to Cayman, Miami. He would just take us with him as he was going to do his work. So there's a lot of fishing trips that I remember, fishing in different parts of Jamaica, hanging out with him and his nephew, who was my cousin. He was like 20 years older than us. So he was kind of like one of my first mentors as well. But then, so to me, life was great, right? Up until age 10. And then parents separated. So at first, my mom left. My sisters left. My 3 older sisters left. And it was just down to my dad, my brother, and myself. And then my brother was given trouble. My dad kicked him out and said, go live with your mom. And it was just down to me, right? I'm 10. And I remember my aunt, my dad's older sister, she was staying with us. She was moving to the States. And she sat us down and she's like, come on, I mean, where do you want to live? Do you want to stay here with your dad, or do you want to go with your siblings? I mean, me at the time, I'm like, well, I don't want to be by myself. So I chose to live with my mom and my siblings, which, to be honest with you, wasn't a bad decision from a life enjoyment perspective. But similar to Matt, what happened is that we got a little estranged during that period. So I didn't really see him as much. He came by, but it wasn't with an increase in frequency. It was just less and less and less. And the interesting thing, what happened to me is I'm the youngest from that 5. So what happened to force this separation of my parents was that my dad got another woman pregnant. So I have a sister that's exactly 10 years younger than me, beautiful person, love her to death. And the fact of it is that the relationship really, for my older siblings, they just didn't like that. Me, I didn't even understand what was going on. I was 10, right? So I had a different experience growing up with him, although I didn't see him for about, I shouldn't say I didn't see him. I didn't see him as often for about 6 years. And then for some magical reason, I say it that way, I ended up going back to live with him at age 16. Now he was remarried and baby on the way. So I had a younger brother on the way as well too. So it's an interesting life. And I say this to my older siblings all the while. I'm the only one from the 5 of us that actually went back to live with him. And I lived with him for about 9 years, up until the point where he kicked me out. So, and I say he kicked me out, and it was totally well within his right to do that. I wasn't wilding out or anything like that, but it's just that, as they say in Jamaica, two bull can't, rule in the same pen, right? That's just life, right? Another friend of mine will say that adults mustn't live together unless they're married. So there are different perspectives on it. But it was an interesting experience because I felt like that 6-year period where I wasn't living with him. My life I went from being an A student to an F student.
Wow.
A to F. So I was always an A student. It's just that I wasn't applying myself. So what my dad did was come back with that good old school discipline and structure, right? So everything is normalized. Focus on your schoolwork. I'll provide you with everything else you need. You just focus on your schoolwork. But that's what he did for me. So I always say that, and I said this he died last year, January, and I said that in my speech. I said, he saved me, because I don't know what would have happened if I didn't go back to live with him. He kind of just brought back that structure into my life. So, and we never got along at that time, right? Understand something, that we weren't really seeing eye to eye for those 9 years, but the day I moved out, we became best friends. He just wanted me to become a man. That was what it was all about. Become a man, become responsible for yourself.
It's so amazing that I'm blessed to have so many conversations like great fathers like yourself, and you go back to those days, and many of them had a period of time where they weren't with their father.
Yeah.
And I want to ask both of you, how did you manage those younger years, not being with your father?
So for me, it was tough in only to the degree I felt like, to the degree that I didn't do the things that I used to do. So some of those experiences I then missed out on, and it was tough because if I wanted to do anything with him, I had to initiate it. So I wasn't completely without him, but it was still tough nonetheless, because everything had to be on me. It wasn't a, hey son, let's go do this, let's go do that, or even to come pick me up. Like when I wanted to go to his house, I had to get on the bus and go across town and go to stay at his house. So that was a tough part, but at the same time, it was interesting because I loved my pops, but when I moved out, I did have some ill feeling to an extent because of the way, like things that he was doing and telling us, and the way that his discipline and stuff like that, I wasn't a huge fan of. So when I went to live with my mom, and my mom spoils any and everybody that comes into her house. So I was like, I'm living a life now. I don't have to do jack. I was, so that thought of missing my father, it came every now and again. But as long as my mother was taking care of me, I was good. And then 16, I started working on my own. So I was like, man, I got it. I'm basically a man now. I'm good.
Roger?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't even think of it. We just coped. We just carried on. Now, I gotta say, my mom is, to me, still the greatest person that ever lived. So I was living with her. So just like Matt, I mean, life was great. I'm the last child, wash belly, as you call it. So life to me was, although we didn't have that. I must point out to that we didn't have the material things. So my dad was, he was a successful businessman. So materially, he had more, comforts. So the 6 years period was not as materially comfortable, right? So that to me is the real big difference. And then, like the traveling thing slowed down because, as I said, we would go with him. No, he wasn't doing that anymore, or it just. I'm not sure why, to be honest. I'm not sure why. So it's the impact was just not having that male positive guidance. That's really what the difference is. The female guidance is different from the male guidance. And that's why I always say, I mean, it might sound sexist to say, but I always feel like men need men in their lives. Women need women in their lives as well. They need both. Don't get me wrong, but there's a reason why. The male discipline is just different. And from my observation with my friends and my cousins and other people, it's just that male influence in a man's life makes a major difference to how they turn out.
If I can jump
Yeah,
in,
absolutely, please.
I definitely agree with that. And for me, the situation, my mom had remarried, but I was not a fan of her husband at all. So he was not any kind of positive male influence on me. So just thinking back, they're like, I know there's certain things that my pops would have done that this man didn't do, and things like that. So I didn't really give it a lot of thought in that way. But I know that there's certain things, like now that I think about it, some of the things that I'm doing with my children, like as they apply for colleges and things like that. And I'm like, I really wish I would have had my father at that time when I was applying, because like I applied to schools, I got accepted, but I didn't have the money to pay for it. So I'm like, nobody really was pushing me and telling me about scholarships and things like that. And that's all the sorts of things that I'm sure my father would have told me, because he's all about the money and how to get to the money, and and all of that sort of stuff. So he would have schooled me on that, but he wasn't there. And for me, I didn't always want to reach out, because I felt like I shouldn't have to. I felt like this should be a two-way street. It shouldn't always be on me. So to an extent, to think about it, I'm sure my pride got the best of me at sometimes, and I was just like, man, forget it. I ain't calling him. I ain't doing this, because I always feel like I gotta kiss the ring. Like I just gotta, let both work. Like, come on, man.
Oh, good stuff. I love that. Kiss the ring. That's a quotable. That's a quotable.
You know what's interesting too is I did. It's so weird the similarities, because I did like apply to universities. I got through to Baruch in New York, and I brought the acceptance letter to my dad, and he's like, "Oh well, who's gonna pay for it? I'm not gonna pay for it." So it's the same thing. I didn't even. Yeah, I got in, but I wasn't really looking on the other side of how's it gonna get paid. What were the scholarships available? Where were the scholarships available at the time? I didn't have that support. I did have a sibling. One of my sisters helped me with it, but we didn't look at the sponsorship, the scholarship side. We just looked at the application side. So, and to make the point, he did pay for me to go to school, college in Jamaica. So he did that. And then while I was going to school, it was 4 days of school, 1 day off. That day and the weekends, I worked at this company for the whole 3 years. And during the summer, I worked at this company. Wow. So that was my life. So a lot of people, I had friends who were just, they went to school the day off, they would just hang out and go to the beach and whatever. I'm working. Weekends, I'm working. Right. So that's kind of how my dad kind of structured me into this life of responsibility and feeling like this is you. This is on you. You only have yourself to blame for things that are happening to you. It's your responsibility to take care of it as a person. I wouldn't even say as a man, as a person.
Nice.
Mine really came from my mom, and I thought about it. You mentioned something about the economic status, and I know that my mom struggled when she was on her own, definitely. And I remember sacrifices she had to make to get us clothes and stuff like that, and that's what really drove me, because otherwise, like I said, my mom spoiled me. But when I saw that she and I'll be just flat out honest, like going to the thrift store and stuff like that, and I was just at that age, I was like, man, I want to be fly. I can't go to middle school wearing stuff from the thrift store and stuff like that. So I started working, and I was like, from then on, I'm just gonna get it on my own, And before I forget, another similarity, I'm also the youngest of 5, just to put that out there.
Wow.
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. I don't know, Ed, you must be a father matchmaker or something like that. Once he had us on a show, I was on his show, and the three of us, all 3 people that had one common thing, is that their fathers had passed. That was a commonality. Yeah, and we spoke about that as well too. So as I said, I mean, don't get me wrong. In the end, he was my best friend. He was my biggest supporter, and confidant. I could ask him anything. He could ask me anything, right? So the relationship changed completely after I moved on.
It's something how it turns around, because now my father texts, like, we had a falling out. I had to block him on Facebook before and all of that kind of stuff, but now he texts me like regularly, and I'm 46 years old, and this is like I get giddy like I'm a kid again, like when my father texts me, because that's all I ever wanted, was for it to be a two-way relationship. So it's not all on me, So when he reaches out and he just says, "How you doing, son?" and things like that, it means the world to me.
Nice.
Awesome.
Let's move it on. So let's chat about. Can you both of you talk about us about your journey becoming a dad? What fears, hopes, or challenges came up in the process, and how did you manage them when they did come up? Roger.
You want to take that one, Roger?
What's funny about me becoming a dad is I never thought I'd become a dad. So that was the first thing. If I can be transparent, this is a show of transparency. So I remember the doctor said I had low sperm count. So that was the thing, right? So I never thought that I could, get a woman pregnant now, at that point. So I started out later, right? And my now wife, she got pregnant, and we have baby on the way. So the fear, and I always tell my son that he changed me for the better, in that when you have a kid on the way, you start to take life, well, not everybody, but if you are a responsible parent and you're intent on doing the best job that you want to do, you start to look at life differently. So you start to make changes to your, and I'm glad that I started late, to be honest with you. The only thing is that I won't have the time to see them grow to a certain age. That's fine, unless we get that pill and I can live to 200. But the thing is that when you start older, well, for people like me, I partied when I was younger. So I have no desire to go out and go to the bar or go to a club or nothing. I have no desire. So I'm 100% family man, right? I'm here to support my kids. So in terms of the journey, when he came around, it just cemented that fact that certain things I just didn't involve myself in them much anymore, right? So that was one of the greatest things that he did. And then just focusing now, and this is the big thing to me, like focusing on being a better person. So you start to, when you have a child, the child reflects the good and the bad of you. It's like a mirror, right? So you're looking on this little person. This person is mimicking you, the good parts and the bad parts. And when I started seeing the bad parts show up, I was like, well, I gotta squash that. I gotta squash that. So that's the thing that I think the fears for me is, am I going to do a good job? How am I gonna, my hope is that the child turns out to be a successful person. And when I say successful, I don't mean monetary success, but a good person. That they're self-actualized and they have the right approach to life and they're decent, operate with integrity, honesty, right? So that's really, for me, the fears of as a dad is that I'm going to raise a good person to contribute, a good human that's going to contribute to society. That's really my thing.
Matt?
So I'll say this first. One place where we don't have similarities is I had no problem getting people pregnant. That was
okay.
So
that's where
so let me just be clear. Hold on, let me just be clear. I didn't have any problems getting people pregnant when I was younger. Okay. So people got pregnant, right, but then decided not to have the children.
Oh,
right? So it was later on in life when I was like, this doesn't even make sense, because I've gotten people pregnant before. So anyway, sorry. So just to clarify that.
Understood. No, I'm glad you cleared that up. I've never had a problem. And it's funny because my current wife, she actually told me, like, when early on when we were together, she said, "Oh, the doctor said it would be hard for me to get pregnant," and I said, "Hold my beer." And then, you know, 2 days later,
Hold my beer. Let me get to work.
Let me show you
Oh my
something.
God.
But yeah, so for me, the journey, I just talked to my kids about this too. My youngest son asked me how old I was when his oldest brother was born, and I was 22. And actually, by the time he was born, I think I turned 23 because his birthday is the same month as mine. His is the 27th, mine is the second. So I had already turned. But anyway, I was really young and not a very sociable person and all those sorts of things. I had a couple of girlfriends here and there and all of that. So in my mind, I felt like I was ready to be a family man. Like I married my wife super early. 22 when we got married, 23 by the time our first child was born. So we weren't fooling around. But like I said, in my mind, I felt like I was ready. So it wasn't an accident at all. Oddly enough, I was like, we're gonna make a child at 22 years old. I was planning to have a baby. Like,
Mm-hmm.
who does that? Right. So he was born, and then 17 months later his brother was born. So I was just I said I had no problem. I had some swimmers on me. I definitely had some swimmers, so no problem making these babies. But it was exciting for me because I didn't really know any better at the time. And again, I had my mom there to help and all of that, so she was a huge help, always has been from the day he came home from the hospital. So of course, the whole process, and throughout the process, I went to every appointment. I did everything. I lived when my ex-wife went into labor. I lived in the hospital until she came home. I only left to go get food, and that was it. So it was like the most beautiful thing to me, and I was just going to do whatever it took, to be the best father I could be. I was winging it to a large extent because, again, I didn't have much of a relationship with my father from time I was like 13. That's when I went to move with my mom, and my father's husband at the time wasn't much of anything to speak of. So it was just like, I'm just going to do the best I can, and that's really what led me down the road. That played a big part in starting Black Fathers and things like that, because I didn't really have any kind of village of any male support at that time. My mom, and other people, other women and stuff like that. So that was probably the biggest challenge to me, was just trying to figure it all out, and just really learning on the job, as what happens with so many of us. My hope was that I would just raise a beautiful Black child who would go on to excel and do everything he wanted to do in life. And yeah, that was really at the time the biggest hope. I would say fears were, I would say fears. My fears have transitioned somewhat. Earlier on, my biggest fear, and still this is, I won't say transition because this is very much a fear too. Like every day, just them being Black men, my sons especially, being Black men in this society, in America especially, and worrying about them if they get into interactions with the police, will they survive? And that's the biggest thing for me. But then the other thing, of course, like Roger said, is I'm really getting now into a place where I'm understanding like some of the damage that I have actually done to my oldest two children, and the way that they were brought up, and especially being with their biological mom. Our marriage was a toxic one from the jump. 4 years, we went through it just battling. So that, and then jumping into a blended situation and all of those sorts of things, and not really fully and properly assessing like their feelings on it and getting their take and where they stood. My oldest son has always been real quiet about it and really just nonchalant, and just showing that he doesn't care. But I don't think that that's the full the fullness of it. I know that deep down inside he cares. He just, to a large extent, he doesn't want to show it. He puts up a shield. My middle son, he's so much different because he's definitely clearly shown us and told us that he wanted to have a relationship with his biological mom and all of that. So later on, we worked to try to bring them together and let them have a relationship, but she just wasn't trying to do it. So I just feel like we didn't really hone in. And I've always cared, but I've never been a big talker. And that's the thing that my wife really had to teach me about, was really talking and listening to these kids and getting, not only just listening, but getting into deep, meaningful conversations. Because on the surface, like most teenagers, how you doing? I'm good. That whole sort of thing. I'm cool, I'm good, whatever. But really getting past that to understand, like, are you really, and like, what is really going on in your life, and all those sorts of things. Like, just finding out recently, or really, really coming to grips, I should say, my daughter has social anxiety, which explains a whole lot that she's been through. My son has some anxiety, and he's always had issues around his weight and things like that. So I think a lot of those things as parents, we kind of missed the mark in some ways of really understanding where our kids are, especially mentally. And these days it's so important. So in terms of fear, that's one of my biggest fears, is just feeling like I've failed them in terms of really understanding who they are and really helping them to be in a good place. I don't want to feel like I messed them up, as a parent. Like I just screwed them up. And that's the thing,
Right. Having an epic conversation here about Black fatherhood with Matt Prestbury from Black Fathers Foundation in the US, and Roger Dundas byblacks.com. And it's a really good conversation. Now, a little bit earlier, we talked about, growing up with your dad, etc., with and without your dad at times. Leads me to this question. What important lessons did you learn from your childhood experience that you also carried into your fatherhood?
The biggest one for me is giving kids experiences, opportunities to learn and grow through outside of school. I won't say that my father wasn't. I can't remember like how hard my father pushed me as far as academics go, but I know that all of those things, the road trips we went on and all of those sorts of things, were about learning as well outside of the school building. I learned so much just going so many different places and doing so many things. That's really one of the biggest things. And so I've always taken that to heart. With my kids, every opportunity I get, we go places and just to have those experiences and learn different things about those places, to know there's so much more, so much more to the world than just Baltimore City, even just Maryland, to get out, and even just the United States. My son, I know it's a part of the United States technically and all that, but my middle son, for his birthday last year, took himself to Puerto Rico. And these are the sorts of things I'm like, just get out there. None of you have any children yet. You're not married. You have nothing holding you down. Go see the world and experience as much as you can while you can.
Roger.
Sorry. You want me to jump in?
Yes, please.
Are we frozen? Okay, yeah. So Matt is hitting the nail on the head. Life experiences is one of the things that we're big on. We try to expose our kids to different cultures, different food, different experiences, different places. Try to travel as much as possible, even within Canada, right? So just even doing road trips or whatever, because those are the things that you remember. That's what I remember. I can tell you every trip that I've done with my dad. I can tell you every fishing trip we did. I can tell you when he took us to watch Pele play against Jamaica in an invitational game, and we almost got trampled by some. There's a stampede. I don't remember. I think what happened is Pele got injured, and he came off at halftime. People came there to watch Pele, right? So they started, pushing and everything. And I remember my dad just protecting us, like standing up and taking the brunt of the people, stampede. Anyway, so, some of the things that I try to bring to these kids is a rounded experience. So I don't want to go off and do one thing only. So, like my son, he plays sports. He's a soccer guy. He does his video games too. So he's playing basketball now almost every day with his friends from the neighborhood. But his sport is soccer, right? And he plays NBA 2K on Xbox. So he does his thing, right? So he's into arts as well. He's a good artist. I think it's crazy. I didn't even realize, but I've laminated a few of his pieces. He's only 11, and he's done a lot of really good artwork. And then academically, it was, I'd say, he's an A- average. So you can't ask for more than that. They were a kid in school, and both of them are A average students. So academically, they're doing well. But I think what really helps too is to surround them with a village of people. So that's the one thing I missed. That the village got splintered when we were growing up at age 10, because back then people didn't know. My father's friends are like my mother's friends, my father's friends. They pick sides. So then therefore there's some friends you don't see anymore or anything. So the village thing is very important. Not for them just to have like quote unquote cousins that are not blood. We are. We have all these cousins as aunts and uncles that are not blood, but they form a very important fabric in this village upbringing, right? So they know they can go to uncle this or aunt that. They have different people in our network that are different professionals, so they can ask them as well too. There's entrepreneurs and there's professionals in our network. So whatever they think they want to do in life, they know that there's somebody that they can go to and ask them about it. So I think that those things are important. Just that
Nice.
whole balanced upbringing.
Nice. All right, let's find out this. And both of you always got a lot on the go, but how do you balance being a dad, family life, career, health, and other parts of your life? Roger, why are you shaking your head? And Matt's just
there's
grinning.
There's no balance. If you set out to be a good parent, then you know that if your son gets injured at school, it doesn't care. I don't care if I was meeting with Elon Musk. I'm gone. The meeting is over, and I gotta go take care of my kid. So there's a certain priority level that is intrinsic in being a good parent. So families first. Whatever is happening to my wife and my kids, that's high priority for me. I'm not gonna put career or anything else in front of them. So that's how I operate. So that's why I said there's no real balance, because at any moment I'm like a EMT waiting on the next to quash the next emergency in the family unit. Luckily there's not too many. There's not too many emergencies that pop up. But I think for me, because I do run technically 3 businesses, and I feel like I run them pretty successfully. They're all profitable, right? So what I have to do is I focus, and Ed knows this. I'm an extremely focused person. So I'll work out a certain way. I'll sleep a certain amount of hours. I'll wake up at a certain time. I'm the first person up in my house, so I can get up and get some important tasks done before they wake up and start with the emergencies, right? So that's kind of how I kind of structure that, so I can get that intense focus, and then I simplify. I'm not into complexity. I like a simple life. So the business model, I simplify the business model, and I keep on simplifying the business model, because we're not perfect, right? We keep on working on simplifying life. And the other thing that I focus on too is being a minimalist. So that's where a lot of people, they don't know this about me, but I'm an extreme minimalist. Like there's nothing I'm going to get unless I need it. And if I figure out that I don't need it anymore, it is gone. I'm talking about material things. I'm not going to keep material things. I feel like it's like a dead weight on your whole system. So in terms of balance, it's focusing on and staying in the moment of things, right? So Matt doesn't know this, but I'm not on social media.
Mhm.
Let me say that again. Buyblacks.com is on social media.
Right.
Konvo Media, the marketing agency, they're on social media. Roger Dundas is on LinkedIn and Pinterest because I get some good DIY stuff and minimalist ideas and inspiration from Pinterest. But I came off Facebook in September 3rd, 2019. I came off Twitter as well. I was never on Instagram, and I have no plan to go back on any of them because it's a time suck, and I don't have the time. I want to spend the time. I don't want to spend the time scrolling and going down that rabbit hole, and 45 minutes later you're like, why did I just waste my time? So rather than take that time, I take that time, that 45 minutes, and invest either in my family or my business. And that I feel very, very rewarded right now. I don't feel like I'm wasting a minute on anything. So that's how I balance. I focus. I focus in, but the priority is family first.
Matt?
So another couple of places where we differ. I spend way too much time on social media.
Any advice I would give you, it would be
Way too much.
hire somebody to do it.
But I'm working on it. I take sabbaticals, I would say, every so often. I get off completely. I have, excuse me, definitely gotten better. And even in terms of Black fathers, like we have an admin team who really does all the work. I just jump in every now and again. But it's funny because I was joking with my kids just yesterday, and I was telling them about how sometimes I get caught up in people having remarks about certain things and all of that, and I'm like, well, y'all could just keep scrolling. That's what God gave you thumbs for. And my son said, well, what about, I was really holding forks and spoons. I said, yeah, but God knew he was going to make social media, so he also gave you thumbs so you could keep scrolling around. So, but yeah, but and another thing is my children who live with me now are 15 and 17. My daughter will be 16 next month, and son 18 in October. And then the other two who are still in Baltimore are adults. So with the teenagers, it's not as much to balance anymore. My biggest balancing act is I'm a chauffeur now more than anything. So I take them back and forth to work and everywhere else they need to go. That's my biggest thing. And I kind of like, honestly, over the course of the summer, because my youngest son is working a full-time and a part-time, and every so often when he gets a job, he also does pressure washing. So, and then my daughter is working somewhere totally away from where he works. So it's all, and there's no public transportation. So like I tell people, when I first started working, I walked to work back and forth every day. And then, excuse me, when I worked where I wasn't in walking distance, I would catch the bus. Nobody ever took me to work or picked me up ever, except for MTA. That's what picked me up. What we say in Baltimore, Mark, Tony, and Anthony. That's what picked me up. Mark, Tony, and Anthony. So this is a whole different world for me. So pretty much, I'm a chauffeur, and then I balance by getting things done when I can, when I'm not taking them back and forth. That's my main measure. But I really do work to find time. At the moment, I'm running the foundation full time. So I'm at home. I'm not in the school system anymore. So that helps as well. I don't have to go out every day and come back and all of that sort of stuff. So around doing everything that I'm doing for them, that's when I work to fit in. Like I've chunked up my week. So I do certain things on certain days and that whole sort of thing. And that helps me find a balance. And then whenever I feel like it, I make time for self-care. I meditate. I go, there's a lake that's not too far from us. I love to go swimming. So all of those sorts of things. It's not the number one priority, but I definitely make it a priority. I make time. Like some people say, well, if I can find time. No, I have to make time. And everybody, I feel like, should make time. So regardless of everything else that you have to do, the business, the family, and all of that, that self-care piece, it may sound cliche, but it's hugely important. So you really have to make time for that. So that's what I do. The children, of course, come first, and then the other things, kind of fit in where I can fit them in around that. But they can go back to school, so I'll be all right.
Okay.
And the first time that my wife and I went on a trip with just us was July 16th, 2022 to July 20th. So last week, pretty much. First trip ever, just out of the country. Right? So we've done we're close to Niagara Falls, or like 2 hours away from. So we've been to Niagara Falls for 2 nights or whatever, and her mom would come and stay with her. But this time, we went to Jamaica, and I had my godmother, that's my mother's one of my mother's best friends, come and watch them and stay with them for the 5 days that we were gone. So even that, I mean, it's not easy. Without the village, it would have been impossible, right? Without having that village around to help you. So the village does help, even in the neighborhood too. Just having good neighbors that have kids and their kids play with our kids. It's a whole, everything kind of helps you to balance. So being able to make this call right now, right? It's a lot of arranging to do a call in your house and not have screaming and everything going on with an 11 and a 7-year-old, right? So I'm just saying.
Yeah, I had to come to a hotel. No.
You had to do what?
I had to come to a hotel. No.
You see what I mean? Oh, God. There you go.
Okay. Now, I think you may have touched on it earlier, but have there been any specific resources or experiences that have helped you become a better dad?
The Black Fathers Facebook group. and that's a fact.
Now I gotta go check that out.
Yeah, please do. That can be your excuse to be on Facebook, and then get off. Just go to the group, and then don't get caught like me.
I can access it
forever and ever.
No. I can access it through my wife's account. I'm the one that's not.
Okay. No, we don't let wives in though. We don't let wives in. So you gotta.
Oh.
Gotta work around that. Men only. But
he's trying to get me. This guy's trying to get me back on Facebook.
Realistically, it has been a tremendous help for me because, of course, there's not a whole lot out there, and even us as Black men in the society, which is one of the reasons why I started the group, is that even when we get together and do things, we're not really talking about fatherhood. Like, we'll talk about women, we'll talk about how much money we got, we'll talk about our cars and basketball and all of these sorts of things. But very seldom, especially back then, I know there's really an uptick because it's become more of an acceptable thing and more of a encouraged thing to really talk about fatherhood and express how proud you are to be a father. But back then it wasn't something we did a lot. So being able to come to the group and really have people be open and transparent about the things they've gone through and to get different perspectives too. It's a lot like, I not grew up, but I've raised my younger 2 children with the belt. They got spankings, and then the other 2, or I should say the other way around, the older 2, when they were younger. The younger 2, we really got away from that. And part of it was, I got old and I was tired, but it was also getting perspective from other people who was like, man, you really don't need to do that. And when you think about it, like, you know what, you're right. I really don't need to do that. I can be a very successful parent. My children can be fantastic kids, probably even better kids if I don't whip their behinds. So, I stopped doing that. So I would say that's the main thing. And then I've had some other mentors and people I know who run fatherhood organizations and things like that who have helped me a lot. But for me, the biggest thing, just flat out honestly, has been being a part of Black Fathers.
Roger?
Yeah, you know what? For me, I haven't really benefited from the fatherhood organizations here, but I've looked on experiences within my family. And so my brother, he has 7 kids with 6 women. And I am in touch with 3 of them. So, when I talk to them and when you hear the dissonance, right? And that feeling, and even going through what I went through with my own dad and that disconnection that happened for a while. So those experiences make me know that I have to approach things differently, right? So I have to stay engaged. I have no qualms, and Ed knows this. I'll talk about emotional stuff anytime with anybody about anything. And my friends know if you can't open up and talk about what's affecting you, then maybe we shouldn't be friends. I don't want to talk about stats on basketball games. And yeah, I love soccer, football. I love football, right? I watch Premier League all the time and all of that. But I don't want to be talking about who's playing on what team. That's just entertainment. That's not our real life, day to day, what we're experiencing from an emotional perspective. That's not what's going to help support me. So a lot of my male friends with kids too, we talk about like how do you deal. We talk about these things. We talk about how do you deal with a kid that's doing this. How do you deal with this in the school system? How do you deal with your wife and this? These are the things. These are real conversations that we as men need to have. And when I say men, I mean I'm extrapolating this too because there are trans men too, right? So there are people within a broader community of parents that identify as men that we're having these conversations with, right? These things affect a lot of different people in different ways, right? So the experiences are coming from the resources I have are experiences of seeing certain people fail as dads and not wanting to repeat that cycle. So that's really what it is. It was interesting. I was watching. I was on YouTube actually last night, and a video popped up about Mike Tyson. And everybody knows Mike Tyson's story, right? Or maybe you don't. But I didn't realize that he was a career criminal from he was younger. And then people used to pick on him, and he would fight and blah blah blah, and he became a good fighter and blah blah blah. He became the youngest world champion. But in this speech, the 50-odd-year-old Mike Tyson was talking about him failing as a dad and wanting to be a better person, and having to reinvent yourself or redo things. And you can't change what you already did, but you can change what you're doing now. And that was his focus. His thing was, I just want to be there for my kids. That was his thing. He said he wants to be there. He said, forget that he's always been a millionaire. From he was a boxer, age 20, he's always been a millionaire. So it wasn't about the money. What he's about now is this spiritual experience of being a better person and a better dad. And I was blown away by that statement because redemption, we make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. But if you're working to actively figure out what you can change, then you can be a better person and a better dad. So the experience is a thing for me.
Excellent. Good stuff. As we roll on here, what is the most important skill you've developed that is essential for your ability to be a dad, and why is it so important to you?
Man, I'll definitely take this one. And I mentioned this before. It's really for me, it's listening and having real in-depth and meaningful conversations with my kids and being open to them. So having it be a two-way street. So my wife and I are both very open. I mean, we talk very candidly to our kids. Some people would say it's not appropriate the way I talk sometimes, but we have a great understanding, and my kids know. And sometimes they're like, "Oh my God, Dad, we didn't need to hear that." But I don't sugarcoat stuff, and I give it to them straight with no chaser. But I also give them the opportunity to do the same to me. Now they're not talking filthy or whatever, but they're gonna let us know where they are with things, and so we really understand, and we all keep it as people say, keep it a buck with each other, and we're real, and that's what I really had to understand. And I also had to understand that it's always more that I could be doing. Like we know we're never fully done in our progress. We're always works in progress. But for me, like even with just thinking, okay, well, I talked to my daughter, she says she's okay and stuff like that, but I don't really go any further, and I don't ask probing questions and things like that. So I think to really have that kind of communication where it's not just surface, I think that's really important. And then to also just be aware, like my wife always says her spidey senses, like the boys would say stuff and she would be like, oh, my spidey senses are tingling. That doesn't sound right. Let me go talk to them and let me dig into this a little further. And I don't always have those senses and I don't want to say it's just because I'm a man, but it's because I'm me, I guess I'll say. And I just don't always I'm like, man, it's not that deep. It's not that serious. It'll be all right. But sometimes you come to find out it really is. And she's right more times than she's not. I'll give her that credit.
Roger?
Yeah, I think it's patience. It's just to kind of step back and it's just true. The listening skill is a part of being patient, because if you have no patience, you cannot listen, right? Because you just have to sit there and wait and get them to open up about their feelings and everything. We also have this try to have this open door policy with our kids, to have them, tell us whatever is bothering them. And oftentimes when you get to the root of the problem, it's not what you think, right? You're thinking one thing, but they're feeling a different thing. So because we're thinking it based on our experience, when they're having a whole total different experience. So for example, I grew up in Jamaica around all 96% Black people. Let's think about that. So my experience growing up is totally different from their experience growing up. Just that alone changes the way how you see yourself and how you see the world. So I was influenced. My influence was originally reggae music and rock music. So reggae and rock. Most people don't. They're like, rock, you're in Jamaica, but you didn't listen to rock music. I say, yeah, but there's a heavy influence from England, actually. The British groups, Sting, Culture Club, Eurythmics, etc., etc. And then from America, it was really, I'm going to age myself now. I mean, back then it was all about, who was up there? Well, Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder, etc. Those artists, Earth, Wind and Fire. So that's kind of the music that you grew up on. So coming back to it, this patience, and then this listening skills, and then being humble. You have to have a certain level of humility and not make yourself too important, because when your kid wants to play Barbies with you, you just have to sit down and play Barbie. That's what she wants to do. She wants to play Barbie, and you're the dad. What you're gonna do? You're gonna walk away and say, "Oh, man, don't play with Dolly." I mean, come on. It doesn't work, So that's been it's interesting, because I wasn't really all that patient. I wouldn't say I was a patient person, and I've had to again, you just kind of simplify and slow down life and get to that point where you can give that time, prioritize it, give that time to your kids.
Matt, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree. I think humility is important, and to really not put yourself on a pedestal, as the authority. I'm the parent and I'm looking down on you as the child, and and to really respect kids as individuals in a manner of ways. In that way, number one, and not to feel like there's this this disparity where you're this authority figure and is your way or the highway or anything like that, but to really respect their opinions and their thoughts on things, and to take them into consideration and know that they're human beings just like us. We're adults, but a lot of times as adults, we don't look at children as human beings the same as we are. A lot of the things that they go through are the same things that we go through. It's just in a different way. So again, and going back to what was also said, I think about how we have to understand that everybody has different influences, different experiences, and different feelings as those individuals. So something where my son might come to me and he's feeling a way about this, or even crying or whatever, and to me it's not a big deal, but a lot of us will tell them, "Oh, stop that crying, it's not a big deal, get over it." But to him it is. Just like there's certain things to me, like I planned to come here today and I almost didn't get to make it. So that would have really messed my day up if I didn't get to make it. But somebody else might not have thought that was a big deal. Oh, just go tomorrow, just do this, just do that. So in a lot of ways, I know that we do that to kids, and I think we really need to stop and really take into consideration them as individuals and not downplay that because of their ages. Another quick example is when I put stuff in Black Fathers, sometimes I'll say stuff my daughter has said. She's 15, and people will say, "Oh, she don't know nothing, she hasn't experienced life." And I'm like, my daughter and I have some brilliant conversations. She teaches me a whole lot. So they make assumptions that she doesn't know things because of her age, and they probably do that the same to their children in their parenting style, you know. But I don't do that with my daughter, because my daughter told me 2 years ago she wanted to be a neonatal surgeon, and she wanted to end the gender wage gap. She was 13 at the time. So I knew then she was born to be different. So, you know, I don't
Wow.
take any of that lightly. She knows what she's talking about. And yes, she'll experience some things and it could change the way she thinks. But I don't take anything she says for granted, and I can't find the right word, but I don't debase it or devalue it. I'll say.
Excellent. Excellent. Good stuff. We're coming to winding it down here. Just one or two more conversation pieces. What is your proudest moment as a dad?
Oh no, that's tough. Had a lot.
Or pick one.
God, I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I've done a lot of things. I think what makes me the most proud really is starting a foundation and helping other. I know that's not for my own children, but at the same time, I stand an example, and that makes me think of one thing. A very proud moment was when my son told me that he was talking to one of his roommates who didn't have a father in their life, and my son actually told him, and I promise this is not just a plug for Black fathers or anything like that, but he was telling him, like, the young man, because his father wasn't in his life, he was really projecting and, you know, saying all these negative things, and my son was like, well, you know, my father is not like that, and actually my father has created this thing, and there's so many other fathers in this group that are the same way. So for my son to take that, I know that the things I do, like, they are proud of me, and that makes me proud to know that I've done something that makes them proud, to you know, to go out and tell the world I'm their father, but not only just to say I'm their father, but really having pride in the whole idea of Black fatherhood. That means a lot to me.
Nice. Roger?
Well, I'm still thinking, but one of the things I saw recently, one of my son's teachers, she sent him a card, and the essence of the card was that she thought that he was just a joy to teach, and that he challenged her thinking on a lot of different concepts. I mean, you can well imagine, you know, but by the way, my wife is a DEI educator, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So our kids are very aware of the racial issues that exist in the world and the different challenges and disparities between different groups of people. So you know, my son, he challenges the status quo. And I think for her to have sent him a card like that, and, you know, throughout the whole term, he was talking, he said that he really enjoys this particular teacher, who's a white woman, by the way. And seeing him get that card from that teacher, I was saying, boy, there must have been something that we did. That's what I said to my wife. I said, there must have been something good that we did to make that boy be like that. And he's not perfect. You know, nobody's perfect, as I said, but I have never gotten a card like that from a teacher. I'm just saying. I mean, you know, and then when the other part of it was when we read the report cards for this last, it was amazing. It really, I can't. Every teacher spoke about how great the two kids were, and I said, well, we have something to do with this. We actually are the ones that are shaping this whole behavior. So we have to stick to the script that we have. So that if it's a proud moment, it would be that. It's their accomplishments. When I see their accomplishments, I feel like I had something to do with it.
Excellent. Nice. One last conversation piece. I would be remiss if I didn't ask each one of you to give a message for Black fathers.
I'm gonna try to keep it short because my phone is dying. But I would say for Black men, just enjoy every minute of it, and also think about the kids, not only your kids, but how much it means that you are a father figure when you go out and you represent a lot in terms of who we are as Black fathers. So it's not even just about what you do for your own, but also how you carry yourself outside of the home and everything, and in terms of being a representation. But enjoy it and know that we are not who the world may say we are. So stand up, stand proud, and be who you are, and be a living example every day of the best of Black fatherhood.
Roger?
Yeah, and coming back to your self-care comment earlier, you have to take care of yourself first. It's like that message on the airplane when the oxygen mask drops. You have to put it on yourself first. So that means that you have to work on being a better person first. That is your first goal: body, mind, and soul. So cleansing yourself, eating the right food, exercising, thinking positive thoughts, hanging out with positive people, right? And it's getting that time for self-reflection. I align myself because I know who I am. I have to align myself with positive people like Ed to kind of guide me and show me. That's why I said he will say it's me, but I'm saying he's the one that kind of puts a stability factor from a positivity perspective, from like approaching things differently, right? So when you start to align yourself with positive people, Black fathers, that's the message today. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, Roger, for those kind words. It's appreciated and never taken for granted. Matt, before your phone runs out, how can people get in touch with Black Fathers?
First and foremost, blackfathersfoundation.org. That's the best place to go. Go to our website. And then, of course, we have the Black Fathers group on Facebook. If you are a Black man, you can join, whether you are currently a father or not. We also have Black Fathers in Company on Facebook, so they can go there. And our page on Facebook, the Black Fathers Foundation.
Excellent. Roger, buyblacks.com.
Yeah, so you can find By Blacks on social media platforms. By Blacks on Facebook, it's actually By Blacks Canada. For me, get in touch with me, roger.dundas@byblacks.com. I check my email religiously every morning by 8 o'clock. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen,
I respond to emails.
Gentlemen, I want to say thank you for taking the time out, as I said at the front of your positive, productive schedules, to not only make Black fathers, but Black men and Black families and families in general a better place and better people. It's appreciated, not taken for granted. And I have a funny feeling we're going to do in a part 2 on this. So I want to say thank you so much for your time. Remember to give yourselves grace, and don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Be well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Wow, that was epic. Loved that conversation. So many, as I like to say, knowledge bombs were dropped during that conversation. I don't know where to start, so I'm not going to start. I'm just going to leave it at that. So as we close out here, first things first, remember, as always, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there is a positive impact. If you want to get in touch with us at the Dad Central Show, email address podcast@dadcentral.ca. If you want to go to the website, Dad Central website, dadcentral.ca, piles of resources, piles of free resources for dads out there. Piles, lots and lots of the free resources out there. So want to just say thank you so much for everyone who watches the show. And if you want to catch replays of the show, you can catch them at dadcentral.ca/podcast. And that is it. So I'd like to say thank you for everyone for watching. Please subscribe to the podcast and look forward to upcoming conversations with dads around the world to help fathers and their families, because we help fathers, we help families. God bless, peace be well, keep the faith, and walk good. Remember to give yourself grace, and don't just manage your time, manage your energy.